Thanks so much for coming and joining me. And what I'd really love to accomplish this evening is to take something that's often like kind of really big and overwhelming and give you a sense of I can do this, or I can help somebody that I care about do this, and just turn down that sense of a little bit. So we're gonna take this in two pieces. One of them is just gonna be about thinking ahead, about doing the planning, and then we'll deal with some things that are related to the execution of that plan. So the first thing that I realized when I think about what happens often with downsizing situations is that there are these difficult conversations that people need to have, and often those conversations don't go well. Anybody heard of anybody who's been trying to figure something out, like an adult child with their more adult parent, and often that creates a lot of friction, or everybody's got an opinion, and navigating that stuff is really important. And it's really important to me because relationships are important to me. And you win in relationships or you die in them one conversation at a time. So I wanted to share with you a few resources and ideas that I think are really helpful for navigating conversations in general well, but particularly conversations that are more sensitive around changes in living situations, situations with multiple stakeholders. People have strong emotions, strong opinions, and that can just be challenging. So I think that the best place to start with a good conversation is to start with some good questions. And questions to ask when you're considering a downsizing situation often don't start with practical things. They start more with noticing something and then asking what's going on with it. Like how are you doing in your current living situation? What do you love about your current living situation? What do you hate about your current living situation? And things that are open-ended like that request extremes. What's the best thing? What's the worst thing? What's the most fun? What's the hardest? Those kinds of questions tend to access the values that are underneath a person's decision making. So if you're trying to have a productive conversation with somebody who's near you about some upcoming change, asking those kinds of questions will help you to access what's behind their behavior. Why are they resisting this or that? Or why do they seem to be fighting hard for this or that? And the more you can uncover that, the more you can then say, well, maybe this path over here is the better way for you to get to that. But until you're able to understand, I want to stay close to my community, or I want to maintain my independence, or I don't want to have to give up hanging out with these people, then it's much more difficult to talk about any kind of practical things, because all they can think about is the stuff that they want to preserve or the stuff that they want to avoid. So if you can bring that stuff out into the conversation, I like to think of it as like the decision to be made is happening inside of a pool, and you want to get all the perspective that you can and all the information that you can into that pool, because the deeper your pool is, the better your decision will be. And shallow pools, if you dive into them head first, you break your neck. And you don't want that relationally or otherwise. So I wanted to, to put that out there. There's a couple of books that have been really helpful for me. So if you're kind of looking for a conversation skills upgrade, Crucial Conversations is fantastic. The details are in your packet. A book called The Next Conversation, also fantastic. And also Super Communicators. Yeah, absolutely fantastic. So all three of them help to drive toward like, how do you solve practical problems, and how do you strengthen relationships while doing it, rather than blowing them apart. And a couple of pieces out of those that I think are worth highlighting at a time like this would be like choose a realistic goal for a conversation. So if you've got something challenging that you want to talk about, if you set yourself up going into it thinking like, they're going to hear what I have to say and they are going to agree with me, or they're going to admit that they've been completely ridiculous, or whatever that is. That might not be realistic. But what could be a realistic goal would be something like, I can respectfully express my perspective on this thing, and they can too, and we can each feel honored in this situation. And if you have a goal like that, then you can also set up the conversation with that goal in mind and invite them into the conversation with you by saying, I really want to have a conversation about how things are going in your current living situations. I have some concerns there, and I imagine that you do too. And I would love to hear your perspective on this and share some perspective with you. And I want us to come away from this thing knowing that we understand each other and are going to be caring for each other through whatever it is that's around the next corner. And if you frame it like that, then you're not forcing any decisions. And I mean, who wouldn't say yes to having a conversation like that? And that's a technique called creating a conversational frame that is one of the tools in the book, The Next Conversation. And he's got like 25 tips like that that are fantastic in there. But if you take an approach like that, telling people ahead of time what the purpose of the conversation is, they're much less likely to imagine something that is ugly, like that you're trying to force them in a certain direction or something of that nature. So if you can ask good questions and get access to the values of the stakeholders in the situation, that's going to be a big help for you. One thing that I also see a lot of is people kind of running over other people in these conversations. And I'll see one party or the other either start to withdraw from the conversation or start making snide comments or bringing up what your mother-in-law did like back in the day. And that happens because of a loss of one of two things, typically. One is a sense of safety or a sense of respect. So if a person starts to feel like they're being disrespected or they're being threatened or something important to them is being disrespected or threatened, then they'll start getting irritating, or they'll start to kind of like hide. So they'll stonewall you or otherwise step into silence. And safety and respect are like oxygen to a conversation or to the people in it. So like a person who's drowning or being choked, like all they can think about is how to get air again. So if you want to talk to them about anything else, they do not care about whatever you have to say, think about, decide any of it. All they want is to get air again. And the same thing is true if a person starts to feel disrespected or unsafe. And I see that happening in situations where maybe like an older parent feels like their kid is going to try to take their independence away or is going to try to wrest control from them, or maybe a kid feels like the parent is just going to be reckless and they're going to get badly hurt. And so they feel unsafe in that and they start to respond in a way that's not productive for the conversation. So if you're able to monitor for that and then pause for a second and change the conditions around the conversation to restore a sense of respect or a sense of safety, that can go a long way to a conversation that could have turned into a nuclear meltdown, turning out to be actually useful. Good stuff, right? So once you've been able to frame a conversation well, then you can begin doing like a 360-degree review of the present situation and what resources are available, and thinking more clearly about how you'd like the situation to change. So there's a bunch of layers to that about like what a given individual has for personal capacity right now. How's their health? How much money do they have? How much revenue do they have, if any? So all of those are really key evaluations before taking any next steps. And those could be like sensitive topics to talk about. So having the conversation skills on the front end of that can be really useful. So once you've like evaluated the goals and like what available resources a person has, then we can look at what financial possibilities are there. And that might involve connecting with a financial planner to say, if you sell a home and you get X dollars and you've got X dollars in these different kinds of assets, how do you set all of that up so that you don't run out of money 10 years from now, that you can be in a financially sustainable position? So that's the primary purpose, I think, of a financial planner, is to help you understand where that financial sustainability point really is. Because sometimes if you're just doing back of the envelope calculations or something like that, there might be factors that haven't been properly considered that could leave you or somebody you love not having enough money to have the the quality of life that you really want them to have for the season that's out ahead. So that piece is really critical. Also thinking about like what kinds of like options will be affordable will really hinge on that. So what kind of care facility a person might land in, or what kind of home they might buy, will depend a lot on what that financial picture looks like and what the goals are around those financial pieces. So I want to give you a couple of bits about some technical pieces that are important, particularly when selling a piece of real estate. So one of those is Proposition 19, which allows people to take their Proposition 13, like tax protected property tax assessment base. Like typically that's really low. If somebody bought a property a long time ago, they might have $1 million home, but they're only paying on $300,000 of assessed or taxable value. And they're kind of fearful because they'd love to move into something smaller, but they're concerned that if they downsize to a $700,000 home, that they're going to have to pay the standard 1% base tax and then special assessments on top of that, and that they're going to double their property tax burden by moving. But that's not true. If you're 55 or older, then you can transfer your low assessed value to a new property. And that means that people can downsize without taking a big property tax hit. So that's a question that I get all the time. And if you've got somebody who's contemplating that, details are in your packet, and you can always reach out to me with questions around that. But that's something that people ask me about a lot. The other piece that people ask me about a lot is what happens with capital gains? Like how much tax might I have to pay? And how do I manage that the best way possible? And it varies quite a bit from one scenario to the next, but big picture, there's a few pieces that you should be aware of. One of them is this idea of acquisition basis. And basis is like a fancy term for how much does the IRS treat it like you got the property for. So that will include the price that you bought it for. You can stack into that sometimes some capital improvements and costs of selling on the other end. So you put all that together, and then you can subtract that from your sale price, and that gives you a number that the IRS will say is your gain on the property. Then you have some possible exclusions for that. If you're living in the property, then if you're single and filing single, then you can exclude $250,000 of that. If you're married, you can exclude for two people, so you can get up to $500,000 in gain and still be able to offset all of it with that principal residence write-off. So that's super helpful. Another piece that becomes really important when thinking about capital gains also is if you are planning to leave property to your family through a trust or it's willed to them, then that can change the picture quite a bit as well. Because some people will say, well, is this the right time to sell this property or is it not? And if you want to minimize the amount of money that you're giving to the government or the amount of your family wealth that's going to go to the government, one of the strategies for that might be to keep the property until you pass and let it transfer by inheritance. And the reason why that might be a really helpful idea is people who inherit real estate, they get what's called a stepped up basis. So they treat it like the heirs got the property, for the value that it was at the time that the deceased person passed. So if you're looking to like optimize your legacy, then sometimes it makes sense to just not sell the property and hold on to it in a trust or let it transfer by will, so that then all of that wealth can transfer to your heirs. So that's an important piece about capital gains as well. And then if you have investment property, sometimes there are good strategies for helping to minimize taxes there as well. So we had a client who owned 2 properties in this area. She's a senior also, and she wanted to transition to moving out of state. And so we thought through her scenario and realized that selling her investment property here, buying another investment property in Arizona where she wanted to land would be a way to use a 1031 tax-deferred exchange. It's this cool investor trick for not having to pay the government money when you move equity from one property to another. That's like one investment property to another. But then she might later convert her primary residence here into a rental as well, because both of these have gone up like a huge amount in value. So if she sold them outright, she would pay an enormous amount of money to the government. And what she wants to optimize for is like, how much can I possibly leave to my daughter and her family and my grandkids? So in her realm, to optimize for that, then the best thing might be to make her primary investment here, or her primary residence here, an investment property for a while, so that then she can do that 1031 exchange again, move all that money to Arizona too, and not give the government a dime. And maybe she'll rent over there until she passes. And then her daughter gets both properties. The basis gets stepped up. She can sell it immediately afterward and not pay the government anything on capital gain. Yeah, I know, it's amazing, right? Yeah, it's a great strategy. So that's an important piece to think about if you're just considering what you want to optimize for. You know, that's another one of those important questions to ask at the outset before you start initiating actions, is what is it that I really want to optimize for? Do I want to be as comfortable as possible for the rest of my days? Do I want to be as close as possible to certain people? Do I want to give as little money as possible to the government? And your answers to those questions will then influence what kind of strategy is really best for you. And probably my favorite part of my job is actually having those conversations with people, just getting clear about what's really important to them. And sometimes people don't even know until we start talking, and then it starts to come out of them, and they're like, oh, wow, I didn't really realize that I cared so much about that. So that's a way that if you're not really sure, then I'm happy to grab coffee with you, and it doesn't matter how many years in the future you're thinking about something, like the sooner you can get clear about what it is that you really want, the better. So that was a good lead into the estate planning piece. So I wanted to there's a checklist in your packet of things that one of the estate planning attorneys that I talked with said that it's really important for everybody to have. And the main reason that that's important is that probably the less the government is running your affairs, the better. And if you don't have a will, and even if you do have a will and you don't have a trust, then when you pass, your assets might end up in probate. And probate is a court-driven, government-run process that costs a lot of money, is not very efficient, and is a major headache for family. So if you want to make life easier for your family and not lose a bunch of money to probate costs, and you want to be able to direct where your wealth goes when you pass, having a trust that's set up properly, assets attached to it properly, having a pour over will that moves assets that you forgot to put into your trust automatically, having a power of attorney for somebody who can do things for you if you're incapacitated. All of those things are not real fun to think about, but they can make a huge difference in truly accomplishing what's important to you and in reducing stress for people around you. Like if something happens and you're gone and they're grieving, like the last thing you want is for them to be trying to track down how to get into a frozen bank account, or trying to figure out how to keep the lights on in the house with an account that was in their name, but nobody can access because they're not around anymore. So getting ahead of all of those things and connecting with a good estate planning lawyer to set all that stuff up is super, super valuable. And we'll talk a little bit more about some of those planning kinds of things, but where it touches on the financial piece is again about that optimization. And if you use a trust, it helps to avoid all that headache, but it can also have the benefit then of passing property to your next of kin by inheritance, thereby helping them out a lot on capital gains, and you can keep all of that wealth inside of your family instead of giving it to the government. Okay, very good. All right, so one of the other things that I often get questions about is reverse mortgages. So I have Gary from Guaranteed Rate. He's a lender partner of ours, and he graciously agreed to share a little bit with you guys about some strategies around reverse mortgages and situations where they can be helpful. So I'm going to turn it over to him for a couple of minutes for that.
Hello, everybody. How are you? So reverse mortgages, we get a lot of questions on and stuff like that. I'm gonna keep this brief and simple. They are exactly what you would think they are. In other words, instead of you paying the loan down with your payment, the loan is going to grow. Okay. So, and it's all dependent upon how old you are. All right. So your age will dictate how much of a reverse mortgage you can get and so forth. Now people can use the reverse mortgage to purchase a home. They can use the reverse mortgage to pull money out and have a literally line of credit that they need and so forth. They can use a reverse mortgage to just make things more affordable to them. Okay, so you get somebody that retires and they're only on their pension and their Social Security, but they're in a house where they started off at payments like $5,000 or $6,000 a month. Okay, they can go ahead, depending upon their age, and refinance and pay off the existing loan. All right, but then the only thing that they are required to pay are their property taxes and insurance. But every month, the payment on that what would have been their payment on that amount of money, depending on the interest rate, that's a variable rate. The equity just gets eaten up. That's it. And if they live, we had a client that he just passed away at 97. He came in about 10 years ago and got a reverse. And while the appreciation in the market did its best, there was hardly any equity left because of what he had taken out in lines of credit and stuff like that. And so his heirs ended up having to sell the house, but there was enough money, and it's backed by HUD, House of Urban Development. There's insurance to cover that. Okay, so very simply, it's just a matter of affordability for people to go in. Now, if you have a reverse mortgage and you pass and your heirs want to keep the property, they would have to refinance the property on a normal loan, pay the reverse mortgage off, and take the property on. If you have heirs that take on the property and they need to sell it, they would whatever's owed on the first was on that reverse mortgage would be paid off in the sale, and they would get whatever equity is left, just as if they had a normal loan. Okay, so I want to kind of keep that simple. It's just a matter of what people will do when they're in a situation where it's really not affordable or it doesn't make sense to continue to make this payment. They're becoming more and more popular because people are going, I have all this, especially nowadays where they have all this equity, okay, because of what's gone on in appreciation in the last 5 to 7 years. They're just saying, hey, I'm just going to go ahead and, my heirs will take care of it, but I'm just going to go ahead and live a better life, and that's it. So I want to keep it simple, just to give you because to dive deep into it, it's really better if anyone is interested in come and talk individually about your situation and then map it out. If you own a home, what it would be, all that kind of stuff. I'm more than welcome to do. I'll have some cards back there you can take with you. But are there any questions right now on reverse mortgage? Okay, I just want to keep it simple. I'm going to say this not because Caleb asked me to be here, but he's one of probably, and I'm blessed to deal with a number of agents, but he's probably one of the 3 that I know of in the Inland Empire here that takes the time to talk to seniors about what's going on. And I'm not saying it, I'm not saying because he asked me to be here tonight, but you're blessed to have this guy because he really truly comes from here. It doesn't come from here. That's what it's about. Back to you, boss.
Right. Thanks, Gary.
I'm just reading what you texted me to say.
Yeah. Yeah, cool. Thank you, Gary. All right. So one other piece that sometimes people will ask me about that's financial related is just like the cost of physically moving. And we tried to call a bunch of moving companies and ask them for quotes so that we could make a nice chart for you that says, like, if you're going to move a place of this size, this many miles, like, this is how much it costs. And all the places we called said, sorry, we can't do that for you because every situation is so different. So in your packet is the information that we were able to gather. I ran a few quotes on things like if you got one of those U-Haul U-Box containers and you packed it yourself and then you shipped it to Arizona and then to Texas and then to Florida, like how much different is that? So between the different pieces that we were able to get and a few specific examples from two men in a truck shipping company, I got a sales rep from there on the phone and she's like, oh yeah, we recently did this and we recently did that. And if you were going to try to go here, we did one of these and it was this much money. So that'll give you like an idea of how to think about those things as well. So before we move to our next stage, do you guys have any questions about like any of the financial pieces that we've touched on here so far? No. All right. So everybody is very clear. That's fantastic. All right. Well, then the next really humongous question is, where do I go if I'm not here? Or where should my loved one go? And there's just so many possibilities. So this returns to that question about what is it that you or they want to optimize for. This living situations, they're on a spectrum of different things, like how much maintenance do you want to handle? How much independence versus community do you want to have? How much like assistive care do you want to have? Maybe how much traveling do you want to do? How much do you want to actually be physically in a particular place? And meshing that with what's actually affordable will then lead to like narrowing the field to certain particular options. So one of the other tools in your packet there is a list of most of the common living situations on a scale from sort of like highest maintenance and highest independence to I can't remember my name half of the time, much less any of the other things that I need to stay alive. So I need other people to help me with that. And we don't, I think, need to get into the details too much of each of those here, but it's good to know a little bit of what options are available in terms of maybe like a single family home that's not 2 stories, that's smaller. That might be a way to downgrade maintenance. Moving into a single level condo might be a way to shrink maintenance more, but still maintaining independence. Or maybe moving to a mobile home, that can be a really affordable option to stay in a particular area, and that you can do those with like a really low down payment, and often that can free up some capital for other things. And there are a lot of like assisted type facilities that have varying degrees of care, and I've connected with a couple of really great people who specialize in helping people figure out like which of those facilities might be best for a given family. And I didn't know that you didn't have to pay them like as a consultant for that. Many of them have contracts with the facilities that they place people in, and so those facilities will then like pay them a commission for bringing a client or customer to them. So that's a pretty cool piece to be able to get some good professional advice about here are the options that are out there, here's the kind of care that they can provide. And that's one of those things that I see people get burnt out on when they're trying to do it on their own, because there's just so many options, so much research you can do, that the decision fatigue is real, and it's exhausting, especially if they're like adult children who are trying to care for aging parents at the same time, and they're trying to figure all this stuff out while keeping their aging parent from crashing and burning. So if you want to have a conversation around that, I'm happy to facilitate a conversation or provide any information that will help you understand what options are really available to you or what's realistic. So if you've had some conversations with your financial advisors and you're clear about what resources you have, then you can get in touch with me at any point and say, here's basically what we've got for income and how much cash we think we could have. We're entertaining these possibilities. Caleb, what's out there that might be workable with these resources? And before you ever make any commitment to doing anything, I'm happy to get you information like that, because I always want you to, as much as possible, if you're connected to me, to know what options are available to you and have clarity that whatever option you're choosing is the best one that you can choose right now. So it's never a waste of my time to invest in the relationship with you in that way. So I don't want you to ever hesitate about asking me about something because you're like, oh, I'm not really sure if I'm going to be doing anything soon. I don't want to waste Caleb's time. I never think of it like that. I want to help you make the most informed decisions that you can and get as much clarity and peace about it as early as possible. Sound good? Good. So if you are thinking about moving out of state or know somebody who's thinking about moving out of state, often people are thinking about that because mostly for affordability reasons, some people for political reasons. We've had a number of conversations lately about I want to get out of California because it's so expensive or so whatever. But where do I go out of state? There are lots of other states, and the US is a really big place. And narrowing the field from out of state to a particular place that I'm considering can be difficult. So we built a pretty cool AI assisted tool that I can have a conversation with you about what's important to you, and I can plug that in. It checks against an affordability index that the federal government produces, and it will find places that have a lower cost of living, that have certain features in that metro area. So if you're like, hey, I really want to be by the mountains, or I really want Four Seasons, or I really want a place that's more politically liberal or more politically conservative, and we can plug all of that in, and it will recommend metro areas that meet those criteria. And we can even say things like, I want the median price in that metro to be about this so that I can afford a really nice house in that area and pay cash for it and have that more affordable cost of living scenario. So it's really handy to be able to have 5 metro areas to explore. And then we have another tool that I can pull a report on homes that are available in that price range in that area also, just to give people a sampling. So if you had 5 metros, I could pull 15 houses that had the criteria that you might be looking for. And so for somebody who's downsizing, that'd be I want something in a senior community that's single level, that's under this price. And there's a lot of great benefits that can come with that. So if ever that tool would be useful to you, I would be thrilled to help in that way. So just know that that's there for you. All right. So the next big question is, what do I do with all of my stuff? Yeah, I'm not even thinking about, I'm not even a senior, but I think about that stuff because I have 5 daughters, and they accumulate clothing. They have very generous grandparents also who are avid garage sailors. So we have a lot of belongings in our home. And again, as with some of the other themes this evening, I want you to start thinking about who before you start thinking about how. Because when you start thinking about how am I going to do this, your overwhelm meter goes way up. And if you can find the right who for your how, then your scarometer can go down by a lot. And that same principle is true with the finances, figuring out your options for where to land, and also figuring out the physical stuff. So there are people that if you want, you can give them some criteria and they will separate your stuff and organize it for you. There are people who, if you've just got a ton of stuff that you want to be financially responsible with, you don't want to just trash it, you don't want to pay for trashing it, They will come and help you set up either an estate sale or a downsizing sale, and they will appraise everything, price it, rack it, set it out, advertise to their audience of people that follow them around looking for bargains. My in-laws are probably among them. And they will help to both eliminate some headache on transporting the stuff and like getting it maybe to somewhere that will be more productive. And even if you don't make a whole bunch of money by doing that, at least you didn't like lose money on having to pay a bunch for trash removal fees or anything like that. And so there's a lot of administrative, physical, and financial burden that can be lifted by a professional estate sale company, or one that will essentially host a super professional garage sale for you and run the whole thing on your behalf. So that's super helpful. There are also some donation partners that we found. So there's certain nonprofit thrift stores like Salvation Army, Acts in Pomona. They'll come and they'll like pick up qualified items from your property and take care of that for you if you've made the decisions about what's going to stay and what's going to go. So that can be another low headache way to deal with a bunch of stuff, not send it to the landfill, and maybe help an organization that is supporting causes that are good in the world. And we even found one outfit that they have specific families in need, that if you've got certain items that you'd like to know where that stuff landed and who it helped, then you can send pictures to them and they'll see if any of their families in need any of that stuff, and it can go directly to them. And so if you want a more relational route, that's a possibility also. All right, so once you've figured out which of these different options you want to go down for what to optimize for financially, what to optimize for physically, what to optimize for relationally, and just for well-being, then comes the piece of figuring out all the who's for all of those hows and assembling your team and then executing the plan. And I like to think about assembling your team in just these big categories of who's going to help you with the legal and legacy pieces, who's going to help with the financial pieces, who's going to help with the material stuff, and then who's going to help with the real estate. Hopefully it's me and my team for real estate. And what I want to say most about that is that if you're going to work with me and my team, our goal is to help you through each decision, each element of the process with the minimum investment of your own time, energy, and brain damage as possible. Because your life has plenty of stress in it already, outside of whatever might be going on with preparing a place for sale or trying to find a place to buy or doing both of those things at once. So we will do our best to interface with all of the other players that are going to be involved in the process on your behalf to the degree that you feel comfortable doing that. So we had somebody who sold a property with us that they were in Thailand and they did the whole thing from Thailand. And we helped them fix up their place and sell it, everything, beginning to end. We sent them documents to the embassy in Thailand so they could get it notarized and back to us. And they didn't touch a single thing. We took care of all of it. So in a lot of situations where seniors don't have the energy, and even their kids don't really have the energy because they're just juggling so many logistics from day-to-day life, we can really shine for them by being able to take a lot of that stuff off of their plate and coordinate all these different steps to be able to create a good outcome without them having to invest so much of their personal time and energy in it. And that way they can stay available to maximizing the time that they have left with their families, the people that they care about, and doing the things that they really want to be available to. And I think that's the most important part about choosing the right teammates, is that you get all the benefit of their capacity and their experience right now. And that leaves you then available to whatever's most important to you. So anyway, if something's really important to you and you love it, then you can go ahead and hold on to it. And if there's something that you want to offload, we will help you to figure that out. So a lot of people ask me about what happens if I have a place that I want to move to, but I haven't sold my home yet, or I know that I want to move, but I haven't found the place that I want yet. And there are these things called contingency sales that can help with managing the timing on those things. Who here is familiar with a contingency sale? Anybody heard that term before? Yeah, Gary, you better have heard it all the time. Yes. So a contingency is a fancy word for something's only going to happen if this other thing happens. So I only want to buy your house if my house sells and the buyer goes all the way through and it closes. Or I only want to buy your house if my sale goes through and my buyer over here doesn't flake on me. So a contingency is a contractual protection that says I can exit this deal if something doesn't go the way that I expect it to or the way that I want it to within a certain period of time. So let me give you a really good example. We had somebody who was in a big 2-story home in San Gabriel. They wanted to move closer to family who lived in Glendora, and they were in a 2-story home. They wanted to move to a single level home. They had a pool. They wanted to get away from the maintenance from that. And they were really nervous about kind of being stuck homeless. And so they said that whoever bought their house needed to give them 75 days to lock in a deal on a replacement property. And I thought, you shouldn't need that long, because they were going to pay cash for their next property, but they just wanted that protection. And ultimately, we did find a buyer who was willing to wait that long. So when we signed the contract for the sale to those buyers of their property in San Gabriel, the clock started ticking. They had 2.5 months. We got an offer accepted for them, I think, like a week later. They made an offer on the first house that they were seriously interested in, got that accepted. Then they had to bail on that one. And then we found another one, same thing, like the second offer that they made, they also got accepted right away. And so that timing worked out well. But if something had gone wrong on one of those deals and they said, hey, it's just not going to work out for us to buy right now, they could have gone back to those buyers on their house and said, hey, sorry, we're going to have to cancel, and under this contingency, we're not able to secure a replacement home. And so they made sure that they wouldn't be homeless by doing that. In some other cases, if people are not sure where they want to land, but they want to be ready to go, then we can get all the marketing prep done ahead of time, and they can go out looking, and when they find the right place, we could kind of push the button on marketing, and now the world knows that their current home is for sale. You can make an offer on the next property, and those people will take you seriously because you're on the market on the one over here, but you didn't burn a bunch of time of a buyer like waiting around for you to do something on this side, because people don't want to wait forever, right? So it can work out really well to get prepped ahead of time and have all that marketing stuff set and ready to go so that we can just push the button on activating, bringing it live to the world, whilst somebody is touring a set of homes that are pretty likely that one of them is one that they're going to want to make an offer on. So we've done that for folks who are like downsizing to go out of state. Particularly, that can work really well. Like maybe they've done some exploratory visits, they checked out a few of those 5 metros that we recommended to them, and they've been watching on Zillow, and they've got a list of properties that they think are a pretty good idea. Then they can make a trip out there, like as we're launching them onto the market here, knowing that then if they want to make an offer on one of those, they're in a really good situation to be able to do that. And that offer would be then contingent on the sale of the property here in California, or if you're staying local, that offer would be contingent on the successful sale of the property that they're exiting. So that's a nice contractual piece that we can use, and our team manages all the logistics of making sure that all the timelines mesh well and all of those details come together well. You had something here?
Yeah,
to add, Gary?
There's another tool that's used, and I discourage it unless it's absolutely necessary, and that's called a bridge loan, where there are companies now that will give you a certain percentage of your equity to use for the down payment and closing of another property. You have 6 months to sell your house or pay the bridge loan back. But it's expensive, the fees are very high, we do not do them, it's a separate entity that does them. But there are people that are using these bridge loans to get into so they can become non-contingent. But just understand that if you hear that word, be careful. I'm being very honest, be careful.
Yeah, indeed. All right, very good. So one of the other big questions that we get is like, how do I know if it's the right time to move? And a lot of people ask me if the market is good right now. And I always tell them that the market dictates what options are available to you, and it doesn't really dictate when is a good time to move. Because generally speaking, if you're moving inside of the same market, then you are going to make up on the one side of the table what you might have lost on the other. So if it's a really like seller favored market, then that's awesome when you're selling, and it's rough on the buying end. And so the part that you love about having multiple offers and bidding wars as a seller, you hate being on the buyer side of it. And on the flip side, if the market's like coming down a little bit and there's lots of inventory available and you can get a good deal on a home as a buyer, well, that's the part that you don't like as a seller. So what really more dictates when it's a good time to sell or buy is really, again, about optimizing your life. So once you have clarity about what kind of life and what kind of future you want to be headed toward, then we can have a meaningful conversation about how does real estate fit into either helping you get there or hold you back from getting there. And then if it's really clear that making some kind of a real estate move is going to move you closer to that future that you want, or is going to change your life in the way that you want, that's the signal that it's time to buy or sell. Not that the market is high or the market is low. Except maybe in the case if you're exiting real estate entirely, maybe. But most of the time, you don't even know where the bottom is or where the top is until after it's already passed. You know, it's like if this is like the market and you're like, oh, have I hit the bottom yet? Well, how about now? 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 Right? You can't tell. So moving somewhere in the middle, we can give you clarity of where the market is at the moment. And I can sometimes tell you, hey, in the next 3 months or the next 6 months, it's probably going to continue with this intense change that's going on right now, or it's going to be more stabilized. But my real estate headlights can't really see very much further than like 6 months or a year down the real estate highway. So if anybody sounds really, really confident that they know exactly what's going to happen next year, unsubscribe. Yeah, it's just not realistic. There's probably some pride lurking there, and I want to engage with reality as much as possible. And again, if you want to have a discovery conversation around any of that kind of thing, then I love having those conversations and would be thrilled to help you with that. Okay, so the last piece that I want to touch on with you is the supreme importance of how kind clarity is and how mean unclarity is. So especially in estate planning and thinking about what's going to happen with any of the people around you if something should happen to you, making what your desires like really, really clear, writing them down in the appropriate documents, making sure that the right people have them is the kindest, most loving thing that you can do for the people around you. Because it's just amazing how everybody remembers differently what mom or dad said about how long so-and-so was supposed to get to live in the house after they passed, or how they were supposed to be paid back for the care that they gave during the time that mom or dad was alive or in this difficult time. And so the more of that kind of stuff that can be written down and given to everybody and setting expectations. Like, this is going to be the governing document for how this goes, and whatever else you think you heard from me, ignore that and go look here, please. And that is just enormously helpful for making sure that all your loved ones' Christmases and Thanksgivings into the future are the best that they can be, and that your family stays a family for the time ahead. And I think that's something worth investing in, worth having some difficult conversations for, and maybe investing some money in on the estate planning side. So I think that often, if people neglect the estate planning piece, then what they leave is a diminished wealth legacy, but then also kind of a legacy of chaos and mess that people around them have to figure out. And if you don't direct all of that, and even if you don't have any heirs or anything, like, you don't want your stuff to escheat to the state. Like, at the very least, you could have the possibility of sending some of what you've lived for and worked for to organizations or causes that you care about. So in your packet are some really experienced estate planning lawyers that you could contact for putting together these right documents for you and guiding you through the process of setting all of that stuff up. And it's absolutely worth doing. I think that is all that I had for you this evening. So any specific questions about anything that's on your mind that I didn't touch on or we haven't answered well yet this evening? And it's rare that I get like that level of communication clarity. And we're like 7 minutes before our end time. Yeah, that's fantastic.